Okay, welcome back. Chapter 27. So, in 26, what they've been waiting for this whole time finally happened, and that was the first frost. And with the frost comes the beginning of the end, so to speak. Back in these days, remember, they didn't have Lysol, and they didn't have hand sanitizer like we're doing now, where we're spraying things down with Lysol and we're using disinfectant cleaners on things. They didn't have that, those germ killing substances like we have now. But frost would do a similar thing to the germs, kill them. And so not only is the disease going to start lessening now, people are going to get better quicker, and the germs that are just all over everything and in the air will begin to die. And so everything's beginning to look up now. The farmers have begun bringing their produce and animals and whatnot back into the market, so there is food to buy, and people are beginning to pour back into their homes that had left the city and gone to the country. I noticed, or I wanted you to notice and think about a little bit what it must feel like for the people that stayed here in the city and have gone through this terrible time. What it must feel like for them to watch these families come back home that have been relaxing in the country through this whole time. She said at the end of the last chapter that her neighbors, the Hennings, had arrived back home, and it was like they were returning from a vacation. They hadn't had to deal with all of the hard stuff that Matilda and the other people in Philadelphia have dealt with this last several weeks. So it's probably, I would say, a little hard to take, wouldn't you think? All right, so chapter 27. And by the way, Nathaniel is back in the picture. Nathaniel was a constant caller that week. Mr. Peel had given him a free rein to wander and enjoy himself after being cooped up in the house. Nathaniel said all of the Peels were outside as much as possible. He predicted that the painting family would soon produce a number of landscapes. As word of the frost spread, hundreds of people swarmed into town. The returnees were all well fed. They called to each other in annoying, bright voices. I wanted to tell them to hush. It felt like they were dancing on a grave with no thought to the suffering they had escaped. Those of us who had remained behind were gaunt and pale. People who were dosed with mercury spat frequently and covered their mouths to hide their blackened teeth. Eliza reminded me not to be bitter, but it was hard. With every hour that passed, Philadelphia shed the appearance of a ghost city and looked more and more like the capital of the United States. Like a wilted flower stuck in a bowl of water, it drew strength and blossomed. Nathaniel talked about painting the rebirth of the city. I thought he would do a grand job. Nathaniel and I walked outside together as often as possible. My favorite time was just before sundown, when the dinner dishes were washed and the children ready for bed. Nathaniel would pass by the front door at just the right time. I would pretend to be surprised to see him, and he would feign shock that a busy girl like me had time for a stroll. The first few walks only took us a few blocks and back. Then we went as far as the giant burial ground where grandfather rested. The dirt had been smoothed over, and grass had already begun to grow in patches. I tried to remember exactly where he lay, but it looked different without the confusion of grave diggers and the heaps of earth. Don't fret, Nathaniel said. We know he's here. He wouldn't want you to fuss about a headstone anyway. I nodded. Maybe it's better that he's buried here. He would want to be in as large a crowd as possible. I bet there are more of his friends here than in the cemetery. And he'll hear better stories, he said. We turned to walk home. Any news? He asked. I shook my head. I've written several letters, but they're useless until the post office opens. The newspaper won't run any advertisements before the end of the year. Don't give up hope. It was Eliza's idea to have a small feast of Thanksgiving with Joseph and the boys. I suggested Mother Smith, too. We didn't even need to discuss Nathaniel. Of course, he would come. Keeping the children out of the kitchen while we were cooking reminded me of trying to catch fish in my petticoat. No matter how I tried to get hold of those giggling twins, they always slipped away. Nell was the sneaky one. She waited until my hands were full with the boys, and then she stole a bite from the table. I finally filled the butter churn and set it on the back porch. I told them they would get a wonderful treat just as soon as they turned that milk into butter. That kept them busy for a while. At long last, we sat down to a table filled with food. Mother Smith blessed the meal. Dear Lord, we give thanks for your blessings. For bringing us through these days of pestilence, we thank you. For saving our children, we thank you. For restoring us, for watching over us, for giving us this bounty, we thank you. Watch over those who have passed, Lord. Watch my Betty, Joseph said, his voice cracking. The twins looked on as their father fought to control his grief. Though we were all healed of the fever, some wounds were inside the heart and would mend slowly. Keep them close until we are ready to join them, Mother Smith concluded. Blessed be thy name. Amen. We were solemn and quiet for a moment, but 3 hungry children soon distracted us. It was time to feast. I had forgotten what it felt like to sit down to a proper meal, said Joseph as he cut the beef on William's plate. This is a mighty spread. You set a good table for a girl, said Mother Smith. Hardly a girl anymore, remarked Eliza. Well, I couldn't have done it without your help, I said. I've been very lucky. You made your luck, corrected Mother Smith. Uh-huh, mumbled Nathaniel. I thought he was agreeing, but his mouth was so full it was hard to tell. He reached for more potatoes and winked at me. Any news from your mother? Asked Joseph. Seems to me that Eliza shoved a bowl of beans at Joseph to cut him off. I knew what he was about to say. He thought Mother had died. So did Eliza. She'll be back soon, said Mother Smith as she spooned more carrots onto her plate. I can feel it in my bones, and they never lie. Stop fretting and pass me the butter. A contented silence settled over the table as everyone ate their fill. It wasn't until I set out the pies for dessert that Joseph spoke again. Have you decided what your price is, Matilda? What price? The price for the coffee house. You got a good spot here. You'll sell this place. You'll get enough money to set you up nice. Joseph, Eliza scolded her brother. What? He protested. She has to be practical. What's she going to do? She could work with Mrs. Peel, suggested Nathaniel. The Lord will work it out, Mother Smith said. The Lord helps those who help themselves, Joseph said. It's no use pretending. This business needs to be sold for Maddie's dowry, and Eliza here has to find a new job. Eliza could work for Mrs. Peel too, said Nathaniel. They're in desperate need of a good cook. The other one quit after the possum. Mind your own business, boy, Eliza snapped. He's just trying to help, Joseph said. We're all just trying to help. Everyone thought they knew what was right for me. It was like listening to Mother and Grandfather make decisions while I stood off to the side. I put down my knife This would not do. It was time to bring out the plan that I had hatched a few days earlier when I saw my face in the window. "I'm not selling," I said loudly. The argument stopped, and everyone looked at me. "I'm going to open the coffee house for business tomorrow." "More the fool you, then," replied Joseph. "You'll never run it on your own." "I don't have to," I answered. "I'm taking on a partner." "A partner? Who?" asked Eliza. She glared at Nathaniel, who shook his head. "Not me," he said quickly. "What do you know about taking on a partner?" Eliza said. "Plenty," I said. "My partner has to be someone I can trust, someone who knows how to run a coffee house, and who isn't afraid to give me a kick in the backside every now and then to keep me on the right path." Eliza set her fork down. "Speak plainly, child. I'm not fond of riddles." I swallowed. "Eliza, I want you to be my partner. There's no one better suited to it, no one I can trust, or who will put up with me." Even Nell sat quietly. "Maddie, I don't have the money to buy a partnership from you. It's kind of you to ask, but I can't." "No, oh, no, you don't understand. I couldn't take your money. I'm sharing it with you. It's the right thing to do, and it's good business." Eliza started to speak, but the words wouldn't come. This was not what I had expected. She was supposed to say yes, and then we could dance a jig. "It won't work," Eliza said. "We'll make it work," I countered. "It wouldn't be right," Eliza answered. Don't you want to work here?" I asked. "I know Joseph needs you to help with the boys. They could stay here with us. And Nell. This way, Nell can stay with us too. It's a perfect solution." Now let me stop there and explain what Maddie is offering here. When you're partners with someone in a business, you both own half the business. And then you make half the money of what that business makes. What Maddie's offering to Eliza is to own half of the coffee house. And normally when that would happen, the person would buy half the coffee house, and then they would both own half of it. And Eliza said, that would be great, but I can't afford to buy half this coffee house. And Maddie's saying, "You don't have to. I just want to share it with you." And Eliza said she just can't do that because it just wouldn't be right. That's the argument at hand. Crack. Mother Smith banged her cane so hard on the floor that it dented the board. "She'll take it," said Mother Smith firmly, "and no nonsense from you," she added as she wagged her finger at Eliza. "It's an opportunity, and one you deserve, one offered from the heart. I know you, Eliza, you'll worry about shillings and pence," which is money. "So save your share from your share of the earnings and pay out of that. She'll take it." "You'll need a lawyer to write it out," said Joseph gravely. "No, we don't," I said. "I couldn't cheat, Eliza. I could barely sneak a piece of cheese from the larder without feeling bad." Joseph smiled. "I wasn't thinking of you. I was thinking about others. Some folks will say that Eliza took advantage of you. They don't like to see black people move up." "Joseph's right," said Mother Smith. "People love to talk, so you'll do it by the law, with lawyers and wax seals and all. Say yes, Eliza, so I can eat my pie." Eliza looked around the table. "Doesn't seem I have a choice," Eliza said. I leaned over and wrapped my arms around her. Nathaniel lifted his cider mug to toast the two of us. A rapid knock at the front door broke up the celebration. "I'll get it," I said. "Eat up, everyone. There's more in the kitchen." A messenger stood at the door, hat in hand. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "I am to ask for the proprietor of Cook's." I cleared my throat and smoothed my skirt. "I am one of the owners. What can I do for you?" The boy held out a bulging sack. "My master, Jasper Blake, asked that I bring you these coffee beans and mentioned that his warehouse is open for business." He handed me the sack. "We expect to ship soon out of Liverpool carrying the finest tea and beans. Your business will be appreciated." "I know the name of your master well," I replied. "You may convey my thanks to him. I'm pleased that he has come through the plague days. Tell him I look forward to examining his goods." The boy grinned as I slipped him a coin. As I returned to the table, Nathaniel stood up and imitated me, pretending to smooth his skirt and fix his hair. "You may convey my thanks," he teased. "Stop," I laughed. "If I'm going to help run this place, I'd better act the part." I covered my mouth and giggled. It did feel a little bit like play acting. "Better get used to that," said Joseph. "When word gets out that the famous Cook Coffee House is open for business again, you won't be able to keep the tradesmen and customers away."